Commander Peter Mitchell stared at the glowing holographic message floating above his desk in the Earth Defense Force headquarters. He read it 3 times, each time hoping the words would somehow change. They didn't. "This has to be some kind of joke," he muttered, running a hand through his graying hair. The message was clear and direct. Earth was now under quarantine by order of the Third Space Council. The quantum communications array had picked up the transmission exactly 30 minutes ago. Within seconds, similar messages appeared at every major Earth government facility. The aliens hadn't even bothered to send a representative. They just transmitted their decree and expected humanity to comply. Mitchell pressed a button on his desk. "Get me Dr. Kelly and Officer Harrison. Now." 5 minutes later, Dr. Amanda Kelly rushed into his office, her lab coat slightly wrinkled and her auburn hair hastily tied back. First Contact Officer John Harrison followed close behind, his usually neat uniform showing signs of a rushed journey. "Is it true?" Dr. Kelly asked, her eyes immediately drawn to the hologram. "They're actually quarantining us." Mitchell nodded. "The entire solar system. They're calling us unpredictably adaptive and dangerously innovative. Apparently, that's enough reason to lock us away from the rest of the galaxy." Harrison moved closer to examine the message. His training in alien diplomatic relations had never prepared him for this. "This isn't just a regular quarantine order," he said slowly. "Look at the signatories. All 15 major civilizations of the Third Space Council agreed to this. That never happens. They can barely agree on trade routes, let alone something this big." Dr. Kelly pulled out her tablet and began scrolling through data. "I've been studying their biological records for months. There's something they're not telling us." She walked to the wall display and brought up several charts. "Look at these patterns in their research requests. They've been asking for very specific data about human adaptation rates, cellular regeneration, and neural plasticity." "In basic terms, Doctor," Mitchell reminded her. "Sorry," she said with a slight smile. "They've been really interested in how quickly humans can change and learn. But here's the strange part. Their questions suggest they're afraid of something. The data requests have markers I usually see in threat assessment protocols." A soft chime interrupted them as Mitchell's desk lit up with incoming calls. The news was spreading and panic was setting in around the world. "Sir," Harrison said, checking his own device, "I'm getting reports of unusual activity at the lunar observation posts. Unknown objects are appearing at the edge of our solar system." Mitchell straightened his uniform and took a deep breath. "Show me." The wall display shifted to a live feed from Luna Base 1. Massive structures were materializing at regular intervals along what appeared to be a predetermined boundary. Each one looked like a dark metallic flower, its petals closed but ready to bloom. "Defense platforms," Harrison said grimly. "They're setting up a containment field." Dr. Kelly was already analyzing the structures. "The energy readings are off the charts. Whatever these things are, they could probably stop anything from getting in." She paused, frowning at her readings, or out. Mitchell watched as more platforms appeared. "Get me the Secretary General. We need to." The lights in the office flickered, and a new hologram appeared, this one showing a being Mitchell had never seen before. Its crystalline form pulsed with internal light as it spoke in perfectly translated English. "People of Earth," it began, its voice carrying an odd musical quality. "I am Sentinel Observer X Claw of the Third Space Council. What follows is a message of great importance." The 3 humans watched in stunned silence as the alien continued. "Your quarantine is not merely a punishment or restriction. It is a necessity. Humanity has begun to display traits that were thought extinct in this galaxy for millions of years. Your rate of adaptation, your cognitive evolution, your technological advancement, they follow patterns we had hoped never to see again." Dr. Kelly's tablet clattered to the floor. "Commander," she whispered, "these readings, the Sentinel Observer is terrified. The crystalline being's light pulses quickened. We cannot risk the awakening. Not again. The quarantine will remain until we can determine if the ancient protocols were breached. For the safety of all, you must remain isolated. Any attempt to break quarantine will be met with immediate response. This is not negotiable." The hologram vanished, leaving the office in a heavy silence. Harrison was the first to speak. "Ancient protocols. What ancient protocols?" Dr. Kelly was already pulling up new data on her retrieved tablet. "Give me an hour with the xenobiology team. There's something in our genetic history they're seeing that we've missed." Mitchell looked out his window at the Washington skyline, where crowds were beginning to gather as news of the quarantine spread. "You have 30 minutes, Doctor. Then I want options on my desk." He turned to Harrison. "Get me everything we have on these defense platforms. If they're keeping us in, I want to know exactly what we're dealing with." As his officers rushed out, Mitchell returned to the holographic decree. The words still hadn't changed, but now they carried a different weight. The Third Space Council wasn't acting out of arrogance or disdain. They were acting out of fear. And in Mitchell's experience, fear either meant humanity was a genuine threat, or humanity was about to be caught in the middle of something much, much bigger. His desk chimed again. The Secretary General was waiting to hear his assessment. Mitchell straightened his shoulders and took another deep breath. Humanity had faced impossible odds before. They'd survived world wars, climate disasters, and their own near-extinction events. Whatever was coming, they would face it together. He pressed the button to accept the call, his mind already working on ways to turn this quarantine into an advantage. After all, if the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy were afraid of humanity's potential, maybe it was time to find out exactly what that potential was. As Mitchell began his report, Dr. Kelly's words echoed in his mind. The Sentinel observer had been terrified, not of what humanity was, but of what humanity might become. And somehow, that made all the difference. On the wall display, another defense platform bloomed against the darkness of space, its petals spreading like a flower made of shadow and starlight. The quarantine of Earth had begun. But Mitchell couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much larger story. One thing was certain: humanity wouldn't simply sit quietly in their cosmic corner. They never had before, and they weren't about to start now. The real question was, what were the aliens so afraid of waking up? Lieutenant Sofia Martinez sat in the pilot's seat of the Nightshade, her fingers hovering over the neural interface controls. The stealth ship hummed quietly around her, its experimental dark matter engines barely making a sound. They were hidden in the shadow of Europa, Jupiter's ice-covered moon, waiting for their chance. "Final systems check," she said, her voice steady despite the tension. "Engineer Wright, how are we looking?" Daniel Wright's hands danced over his console as streams of data flowed past. "Dark matter drive is stable. Quantum Shroud is operating at 98% efficiency. If we're going to do this, now's the time." From his security station, Christopher Adams watched the tactical display with growing concern. "Those defense platforms are no joke. I'm counting at least 50 of them between us and interstellar space." Sophia nodded. They all knew the risks when they volunteered for Operation Shadowstep. Earth had been under quarantine for 3 weeks now, and the Third Space Council's defense platforms had turned their solar system into a cosmic prison. "Remember the mission," she said, bringing up the flight plan. "We're not trying to escape completely. We just need to get close enough to one of those platforms to gather data about how they work. Earth Defense Command thinks there might be something strange about their containment field." Daniel adjusted his headset. "The quantum communications array is ready. The moment we get any useful data, I'll transmit it back to base using the new frequency we developed. The aliens shouldn't be able to detect it." "Shouldn't?" Christopher raised an eyebrow. "Hey, I said it was experimental," Daniel shrugged. "But it's better than no communication at all." Sophia checked the time. They had picked this moment carefully. The defense platforms would be at their furthest spacing as they adjusted their orbital positions. If there was ever going to be a gap in their coverage, it would be now. "Beginning approach," she announced, her fingers connecting with the neural interface. The nightshade responded instantly, sliding out from behind Europa like a shadow made solid. Quantum shroud at maximum. The ship moved silently through space, its advanced stealth systems making it nearly invisible to normal detection methods. On the main screen, the nearest defense platform loomed larger, a massive flower of dark metal, its petals closed tight. "First checkpoint," Christopher reported. "No reaction from the platforms. They haven't spotted us yet." Daniel was focused intently on his readings. "The energy field between the platforms is weird. It's like nothing I've ever seen before. It's not just keeping us in. It's like it's searching for something." They were halfway to their target when the first alarm sounded. "Energy spike," Christopher called out. "The platforms are moving." Sophia's hands flew over the controls as the massive structures began to shift. The flower-like petals of the nearest platform slowly started to open, revealing a core of swirling purple energy. "New reading," Daniel said, his voice tense. "They're not just defense platforms. They're scanning us. Deep scanning, like they're looking for something specific in our biology." The nightshade shuddered as an invisible force washed over it. Warning lights flashed across Sophia's control panel. "They'd got us in some kind of scan beam," she reported, trying evasive maneuvers. But the beam didn't seem interested in stopping them. Instead, it was probing them, searching through the ship and its crew with an intensity that made their teeth rattle. "This is crazy," Daniel muttered, staring at his readings. "The scan, it's not looking for weapons or technology. It's scanning our DNA." Suddenly, all the defense platforms within view began to pulse with bright light. The beam holding them intensified, and a voice filled their comm system. The same crystalline tones they had heard in the quarantine announcement. "Humans," the Sentinel observer's voice rang out. "Your attempt at deception was anticipated, but you have provided valuable data. The markers are stronger than we feared." Christopher's tactical display erupted with warnings. "Multiple energy signatures. They're all activating." "Get us out of here," Sophia ordered, but the controls weren't responding. The nightshade hung motionless in space as the defense platforms fully opened, their petals spreading wide to reveal their powerful cores. "Interesting," the alien voice continued. "Your ship's design shows remarkable innovation. Perhaps too remarkable. The ancient patterns are clear now. The quarantine must be strengthened." Daniel's console suddenly lit up with new data. "Lieutenant, these readings, the platforms aren't just containing us. They're containing something else. Something that's already here, inside the quarantine zone." Before Sophia could respond, a new energy pulse swept through the ship. The nightshade systems began to reboot one by one. "You will be returned to Earth," the Sentinel observer declared. "But know this, we do not maintain this quarantine out of cruelty. We maintain it because we remember. And soon, you will remember too." The defense platforms pulsed once more, and suddenly the nightshade was moving, being pushed back toward Earth by an unstoppable force. Their first attempt to breach the quarantine had failed, but they had learned something far more important. "Send everything we've got back to command," Sophia ordered as their ship was guided firmly, but gently back toward home. "They need to know. This isn't about keeping us contained. It's about keeping something else contained with us." Daniel worked quickly at his station, transmitting their data through the quantum frequency. But what could be so important that they'd lock down an entire solar system? What are we supposed to remember? As the nightshade was escorted back to Earth, Sophia watched the defense platforms return to their dormant state, their petals closing like flowers at dusk. She had a feeling they'd just scratched the surface of a mystery that went far deeper than anyone had imagined. "Whatever it is," she said quietly, "I think we're about to find out. And I'm not sure the Third Space Council is going to like what happens when we do." Christopher checked his final readings of the platforms as they retreated. "You know what's really strange? When they scanned us, for just a moment, it felt like they were scared. Not of us, exactly, but of something inside us. Something sleeping. The three crew members fell silent as Earth came back into view, their failed mission somehow feeling more like the beginning of something than an ending. Whatever humanity was meant to remember, whatever power lay dormant in their genes, one thing was certain: the Third Space Council's quarantine had just become a lot more interesting. And somewhere in the vast network of defense platforms, the Sentinel observer watched the small ship return home, its crystalline form pulsing with what might have been concern. The humans were already showing signs of awakening, far sooner than expected. The quarantine would need to be enhanced, but even that might not be enough. After all, how do you contain something that was meant to be free? Dr. Laura Bennett wiped sweat from her forehead as she stared at the massive stone wall deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. The underwater research facility's lights illuminated strange symbols that seemed to pulse with a faint blue glow. 4 weeks into Earth's quarantine, and they had just made the discovery of a lifetime. "Professor Carter," she called through her comlink, "I think you need to see this. The symbols, they're responding to our presence." Professor Alan Carter's voice crackled through the speaker. "Don't touch anything. I'm on my way down with Agent Murphy." Laura couldn't take her eyes off the wall. The deep-sea excavation had started as a routine archaeological study, but after the Third Space Council's quarantine, Earth Defense Force had taken a special interest in any signs of ancient civilizations on Earth. 10 minutes later, Professor Carter and Field Agent Ryan Murphy arrived in the underwater observation chamber. Carter immediately went to the wall, his eyes wide with excitement. "Incredible," he breathed, pulling out his scanning equipment. "These aren't just symbols. They're some kind of advanced data storage system, and they're still active after what must be millions of years." Agent Murphy kept his distance, his hand near his weapon out of habit. "Can you read any of it?" Carter nodded slowly. "Some of it. It's similar to other ancient languages we found, but this is much older. Much, much older." He ran his hand just above the surface of the wall, careful not to touch it. "It's a warning." Laura moved closer. "A warning about what?" "The awakening," Carter said, his voice filled with awe. "Over and over, it mentions something called the awakening. And look at this section here. It shows a DNA strand, but not like anything I've ever seen before." Murphy stepped forward, suddenly interested. "Dr. Bennett, didn't the defense platforms scan for DNA patterns when the Nightshade tried to breach the quarantine?" Laura nodded, connecting the dots. "They were looking for specific markers that might match whatever this is." Carter continued translating, his fingers moving from symbol to symbol. "There's more. It talks about guardians, about a power that was sealed away. And look at this date stamp. If I'm reading this correctly, this facility was built over 50 million years ago. Before humans evolved," Laura whispered. "Before most life on Earth evolved," Carter corrected. "But here's the strange part. These symbols here, they show human DNA. Not prehistoric human DNA, but modern human DNA. It's like whoever built this knew we were coming." Murphy's comm unit suddenly buzzed. "This is Murphy." "What?" His face grew serious as he listened. "Say that again." "Are you sure?" "We'll be right up." "What is it?" Laura asked. "They found something in the genetic lab's topside. Dr. Foster's team was running new tests on human DNA samples, looking for anything unusual. They found something that matches the patterns in these symbols exactly." The three of them hurried to the elevator that would take them back to the surface facility. As they ascended, Carter continued studying the images he had captured. "This section here," he said, pointing to his tablet, "it keeps repeating a phrase. The sleepers must not wake until the time is right. And there's something about the great enemy returning." The elevator doors opened to chaos. Scientists were running between labs, and several Earth Defense Force officers had arrived. Dr. Benjamin Foster met them at the elevator. "You need to see this," he said, leading them to his lab. On the main screen was a complex DNA model. "We found it. The dormant genes that the Third Space Council is so afraid of. They're not dormant anymore. What do you mean? Murphy asked. They're activating. Slowly, but steadily. And it's happening all over the world. Foster brought up a global map showing hotspots of activity. Whatever was sleeping in our DNA is waking up. Laura looked at the ancient symbols on Carter's tablet, then at the DNA model. They're the same pattern. The ancients didn't just leave us a warning. They left us instructions written in our own genetic code. But instructions for what? Murphy wondered. Carter's tablet suddenly beeped. New translation complete. This last section, it's not just a warning. It's a message. He read aloud. To those who carry the legacy, you were chosen. You were crafted. In your cells lies the power that once protected the galaxy. When the enemy returns from the dark space, you must remember. You must awaken. You must fight. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Third Space Council isn't containing us, Laura said slowly. They're containing whatever power is hidden in our DNA. We're not their prisoners. We're their biggest fear. Foster nodded. And now we know why. Human beings aren't just another species. We're a weapon, designed by an ancient civilization to fight some kind of galactic threat. And we're starting to wake up. Murphy's comm unit buzzed again. Murphy here. What? When? He turned to the others. The defense platforms are changing. They're generating some kind of new energy field. They're trying to stop the awakening, Carter realized. But I don't think they can. Look at these readings. The activation is accelerating. Whatever we were designed to be, whatever power we were meant to have, it's coming back. Laura stared at the ancient symbols, their blue glow seeming brighter now. We need to tell Commander Mitchell. The Third Space Council isn't just afraid of what we might become. They're afraid because they know exactly what we are. As if in response, the symbols on Carter's tablet pulsed once, then began to fade. But the message was clear. Humanity wasn't just quarantined. They were stored, preserved, and protected until they were needed. And now something was telling them it was time to wake up. The question is, Murphy said quietly, what exactly are we waking up to fight? No one had an answer, but as they watched the DNA models show more and more activation across the globe, they all felt it. Change was coming. The Third Space Council's quarantine wasn't the end of humanity's story. It was just the beginning of their awakening. And somewhere in the depths of space, beyond the galaxy's edge, something stirred in the darkness. The Guardians were awakening, just as they were meant to. Just as they had been designed to, millions of years ago. The real question wasn't what humanity was becoming. It was whether they would be ready in time. Director Catherine Powell stood at the window of her office in Earth Defense Force Strategic Command, watching the strange lights dance across the night sky. The defense platforms had been creating these aurora-like displays for the past week, trying desperately to contain what was happening on Earth. Her phone buzzed. Dr. Benjamin Foster's name flashed on the screen. "Tell me you have good news," she answered. "That depends on your definition of good," Foster replied. "The genetic changes are speeding up. We've confirmed cases in every major city now. People are changing." "How many?" "About 3% of the global population so far. The numbers grow every day." Catherine rubbed her temples. "And the abilities. They vary. Enhanced strength, accelerated healing, increased mental capacity. Some can even manipulate energy in ways we can't explain. Captain Hughes is bringing in a new case now. You should come see this." 5 minutes later, Catherine walked into the medical wing. Captain Stephen Hughes stood guard outside the observation room, looking both worried and amazed. "She's just a kid," he said as Catherine approached. 12 years old. Her parents brought her in after she started making things float. Through the window, Catherine saw a young girl sitting on an examination table, surrounded by floating medical instruments. The girl wasn't touching them. They just hovered in the air, moving gently like leaves in a breeze. Dr. Foster approached with his tablet. Her DNA shows the highest level of activation we've seen yet. The ancient genes aren't just waking up. They're fully active. Is she in pain? Catherine asked, watching the girl carefully. No, Foster shook his head. Unlike the early cases, she's perfectly fine. It's like her body was made for this. Which, according to those ruins we found, it was. Captain Hughes shifted uncomfortably. The Third Space Council's platforms are going crazy trying to contain these energy signatures. But they can't stop it. Whatever's happening, it's spreading. Catherine's phone buzzed again. This time it was Commander Mitchell. Powell here. Director, we've got a situation. Mitchell's voice was tense. One of the Council's ships just breached their own quarantine. They're requesting an emergency meeting. They're coming here? Catherine asked, surprised. Already here. And they're not alone. 3 different Council species, all asking to speak with us. They say it's about the awakening. Catherine looked at the young girl again. The medical instruments had settled gently back onto their trays, and now she was reading a book, which floated in front of her face. I'll be there in 10 minutes, Catherine said. And Mitchell, bring Dr. Foster. They need to see his data. The meeting room was tense. 3 alien representatives sat across from the Earth delegation. One was the crystalline Sentinel observer they knew. The others were new. A tall, graceful being with silver skin and a smaller creature that seemed to be made of living smoke. We have made a terrible mistake, the smoke being said, its voice surprisingly deep. We thought the quarantine would prevent the awakening. We were wrong. We have only accelerated it. The patterns cannot be denied. The silver being added. Your species carries the legacy we feared. But now we understand. You were meant to carry it. The Sentinel observer's crystal form, pulsed with colored light. The ruins you discovered confirm what some of us had suspected. Your world was not just another planet. It was a vault, protecting the galaxy's greatest weapon until it was needed again. Weapon? Catherine asked sharply. Those are people out there. Children. No, the smoke being said softly. They are guardians, as their ancestors were before, as they were engineered to be. Dr. Foster spoke up, showing them his data. The genetic changes, the abilities, they're not random. They're following a pattern, becoming more stable with each new case. The silver being nodded. The ancient ones knew their time was ending. They faced a threat they could not defeat, one that would return someday. So they created a new species, seeded with their power, their knowledge. They created you. But they made you dormant. The Sentinel observer continued. Hidden. Protected. Until the time was right. We thought we were protecting the galaxy by containing you. Instead, we were interfering with a plan millions of years in the making. Catherine's phone lit up with a message. She read it, then looked up at the aliens. Well, your plan didn't work anyway. We're getting reports of new awakenings every hour. Whatever was sleeping in our DNA is definitely awake now. The smoke being moved forward. Then you must listen carefully. The threat the ancients feared, it stirs. Beyond the galaxy's edge, something vast and dark is moving. We detected it 3 of your months ago. That is why we tried to contain you. We feared your power would draw it here faster. But now we understand. The silver being said. You were meant to draw it here. You were created to fight it. Suddenly, all the lights in the building flickered. Dr. Foster's tablet beeped urgently. Director, he said, his voice shaking. The activation rate just jumped. Worldwide. It's like something just turned on a switch. The Sentinel observer's crystal form flared bright. They sense it. The Guardians are awakening because they can feel the threat approaching. We are too late to stop it. Now we can only help you prepare. Prepare for what? Catherine demanded. War, the smoke being said simply. The enemy that destroyed the ancients returns. That is why you were created. That is why you were preserved. The time of awakening is here because the time of battle approaches. Catherine thought of the young girl in the medical wing, of all the others like her around the world. They weren't victims of some genetic accident. They were becoming what they were always meant to be. "How long do we have?" she asked. The silver being's answer was grim. "Months, perhaps. No more. The enemy moves faster now, drawn by the power awakening in your people. The ancients' plan is working exactly as they intended." "Then we need to work together," Catherine said firmly. "No more quarantine. No more fear. If humanity was created to fight this threat, we need to know everything you know about it." The three aliens exchanged looks, then nodded. The Sentinel Observer spoke for them all. "Agreed. The time for secrets is past. The Guardians have awakened. Now they must learn to use their power before the enemy arrives." As if to emphasize the point, the aurora above the building flared brilliantly, then faded away completely. The defense platforms were shutting down, their containment field dissolving. The quarantine was over. But as Catherine looked at the star-filled sky, she knew this was just the beginning. Humanity wasn't being contained anymore. They were being released. And somewhere out in the darkness between galaxies, something was coming to test just how powerful humanity could become. Ambassador Nicole Hayes walked into the grand chamber of the Third Space Council with her head held high. 2 months had passed since the quarantine was lifted, and now Earth was ready to make its case. Behind her, Security Director Eric Davidson kept a watchful eye on the gathered aliens, while Dr. Michelle Roberts checked the data tablets one last time. The chamber was massive, its ceiling lost in swirling mists far above. Representatives from all 15 council species sat in curved rows, their diverse forms creating a living rainbow of colors and shapes. The three allies who had first reached out to Earth, the crystalline Sentinel Observer, the silver being, and the smoke creature, sat in a special section near the front. "Humans of Earth," the council leader spoke, its voice echoing through the chamber. "You stand before us as both a concern and a curiosity. Speak your piece." Nicole stepped forward. "Honorable Council, 2 months ago, you tried to contain us. Today, we come to show you why that was never going to work, and why it's time for us to work together instead." She nodded to Dr. Roberts, who activated the chamber's holographic system. Above them, a massive DNA strand appeared, spinning slowly. "This is human DNA as it existed 1 year ago," Nicole explained. Then the image changed, showing new patterns glowing within the strand. "And this is human DNA today. We're not mutating. We're remembering. Becoming what we were always meant to be." "The awakening cannot be contained," one council member objected. "It poses too great a risk." "With respect," Nicole countered, "you're missing the point. We were created to pose a risk, not to you, but to something else. Something that's coming." Security Director Davidson stepped forward, bringing up new images. They showed humans training with their new abilities, lifting impossible weights, healing injuries in minutes, communicating across vast distances with their minds. 3% of our population has awakened so far, he reported. Each day, that number grows. But here's what's important. It's not random. The abilities are emerging in patterns, like pieces of a puzzle coming together. Dr. Roberts took over, her voice steady despite her excitement. "We've discovered something remarkable in the ancient ruins. The beings who created us didn't just give us power, they gave us purpose. Each different ability, each genetic activation, is part of a larger design. We're not just weapons, we're a defense system." The chamber erupted in murmurs and clicks of conversation. Nicole waited for them to quiet down before continuing. "The enemy that destroyed the ancients is returning. You know this. Your own sensors detected it months ago. That's why you tried to quarantine us. You thought our awakening would draw it here faster." She paused, looking at each council member in turn. "You were right, but that was always the plan." The council leader leaned forward. "Explain." Nicole gestured, and new images appeared. Star charts showing something massive moving in the space between galaxies. The ancients knew they couldn't defeat this enemy, but they could prepare for its return. They created us, programmed us to sleep until we were needed, and gave us the tools to fight. But they knew something else too. They knew we would need help. Dr. Roberts brought up more data. The abilities awakening in our people aren't just for combat. Some of us can interface with ancient technology. Others can sense threats across vast distances. And some, she smiled, some of us can link different species together, creating a unified defense that's never been possible before. As if on cue, a young woman stepped out from behind them. She was one of the first to awaken, and her abilities had proven unique. She raised her hands, and suddenly every being in the chamber felt a gentle touch in their minds, not intrusive, but welcoming. "This is what we can offer," Nichols said into the stunned silence. "Not just our strength or our powers, but our ability to unite. The ancients didn't just make us warriors, they made us bridges." The Sentinel Observer's crystal form pulsed with bright colors. "The humans speak truth. We have seen it ourselves. Their abilities do not threaten us, they complete us. But the enemy approaches, the smoke being added. Faster now. The humans' awakening has indeed drawn its attention." "Good," Nichols said firmly. "Let it come. But not to a quarantined Earth. Not to a divided galaxy. Let it come to find all of us standing together, ready to fight as one." The council chamber was quiet for a long moment. Then the silver being stood. "I move to formally end Earth's quarantine and grant them full council membership. We will need their strength in the days to come." One by one, other council members stood, adding their support. The council leader raised its hands for silence. "Ambassador Hayes," it said slowly, "your words are compelling. Your evidence is clear, but you must understand, if we accept this, if we embrace humanity's awakening, there will be no turning back. The enemy will come, drawn by your power, and the galaxy will face a war unlike any in our history." Nichols smiled. "With respect, honored leader, the war is already coming. The only choice we have is whether to face it divided or united." She gestured to the young woman beside her, who was still maintaining the mental link between all present. "Feel what we offer. Feel what we can become together." Through the link, every being in the chamber sensed it. The strength, the purpose, the absolute certainty that they were meant to stand together. This was why the ancients had created humanity, had hidden them away until they were needed, not just as weapons, but as catalysts for unity. The council leader was quiet for a long moment. Then it stood. "The quarantine is ended. Earth is recognized as a full member of the Third Space Council, and may the ancients' wisdom guide us all in the battles to come." As the chamber erupted in voices of support and celebration, Nichols felt a tremor of something through the mental link, a distant darkness, vast and cold, turning its attention toward their galaxy. The enemy had sensed them, just as they had sensed it. But now, thanks to the ancients' long-ago plan, they would face it together. Humanity was awake, their powers were growing, and they were no longer alone. The real question was, would it be enough? As Nicole looked around the chamber at their new allies, she knew they would soon find out. The ancient prophecy was coming true, and the final battle was approaching. Earth's quarantine was over. The time of preparation had begun. Fleet Admiral Lisa Parker stood on the bridge of the Earth ship Guardian Dawn, watching as the combined fleet assembled. The massive view screen showed hundreds of ships from every council species moving into formation. What had begun as a quarantine had become the galaxy's greatest alliance. "Chief Edwards," she called to her science officer, "how are the ancient systems integrating with our ships?" Paul Edwards looked up from his console, his eyes glowing slightly, one of the many signs of humanity's awakening. "Better than we could have hoped, Admiral. The technology seems to recognize us. It's like it was waiting for us to claim it." At the tactical station, Andrew Collins monitored the fleet's deployment. "All ships report ready, Admiral. The Guardian Protocol is active across all vessels. 3 months had passed since Earth joined the Council. In that time, humanity's awakening had spread to 10% of the population. Those with abilities had quickly learned to use them, guided by knowledge hidden in their very genes. But more importantly, they had learned to share their power with others. "Show me the enemy's position," Lisa ordered. The view screen changed, showing the dark mass approaching from between the galaxies. It was closer now, close enough to see its true form. It wasn't a fleet or an army. It was a vast cloud of living darkness, consuming everything in its path. The ancients called it the Void, Paul explained, reading from screens only he could see with his enhanced vision. They couldn't defeat it because it wasn't just one thing. It was millions of separate entities acting as one. That's why they created us the way they did. Lisa nodded. The awakened humans had many different powers, but they all shared one crucial ability. They could link minds and share strength with others, even across species. It was the key to everything the ancients had planned. Her comm unit chimed. "Admiral, the Council representatives are ready. Put them through." The screen split, showing the leaders of all 15 Council species. The Sentinel Observer spoke first, its crystal form pulsing with determined light. "The enemy approaches the galaxy's edge. Our estimates show we have 6 hours until first contact. Are the human crews ready?" "We are," Lisa confirmed. "Every ship in the fleet has at least one awakened human aboard. The Guardian Protocol is active and stable." The smoke being spoke next. "We feel the links even here. Your people's power to unite minds and share strength. It is remarkable. The ancients chose well. But will it be enough?" The silver being asked. Lisa looked at her crew. Paul Edwards was connected to the ship's ancient systems like they were part of his own body. Andrew Collins could sense every weapon and shield in the fleet as if they were extensions of himself. And through them, through all the awakened humans throughout the fleet, every ship and every crew was linked together. "Show them," she ordered. Paul nodded and activated the Guardian Protocol at full power. Across the fleet, thousands of minds joined together. Alien crew members felt their strength multiply as human abilities flowed through the link. Ships began to glow with combined power, their systems working in perfect harmony. By the ancients, the council leader whispered, "The prophecies were true. You are not just guardians. You are the key to all of us working as one." "The Void won't expect this," Lisa said confidently. "It destroyed the ancients because they fought alone. We won't make that mistake." Suddenly, alerts flashed across every screen. The enemy had increased speed. The dark cloud was rushing toward them now, as if it sensed their preparation and wanted to strike before they were ready. "All ships, battle positions," Lisa ordered. "This is what we were created for. This is what humanity was preserved for. The enemy thought it would find us divided and weak. Instead, it's going to find something it's never faced before, a galaxy united." Through the mental link, she felt the response of thousands of crews, human and alien alike. There was no fear now, only determination. The Guardian Protocol hummed with power, connecting them all into something greater than the sum of its parts. Paul's enhanced senses detected movement in the void. They're launching an advance force, multiple entities, moving fast. "Show them what we can do together," Lisa commanded. "All ships, execute Guardian Protocol Alpha." The fleet moved as one, their combined powers creating patterns of light that pushed back the darkness. The first wave of void entities struck their lines and shattered against their unified defense. "It's working," Andrew reported excitedly. "The combined shields are holding. Our weapons are actually hurting them." Through the mental link, Lisa felt the enemy's surprise. The Void had expected to find the same divided galaxy it had conquered before. Instead, it found something new. Billions of minds working as one, their powers combined in ways the ancients had only dreamed of. "This is Fleet Admiral Parker to all ships," she broadcast. "The enemy is here. The time of preparation is over. Remember what we are, not just humans, not just individual species, but guardians of all life. Together, we will finish what the ancients started. The vast cloud of darkness loomed closer, but now it moved more cautiously. It had expected easy prey. Instead, it found a galaxy transformed by humanity's awakening, a galaxy where ancient powers had been reborn and improved upon. Guardian Protocol Beta is charged, Paul reported. All ships report ready. Lisa stood tall on her bridge, feeling the combined strength of the entire fleet flowing through her. The ancients created us for this moment. They gave us the power to unite, to stand together against the darkness. Now we show them their faith was well placed. She paused, then gave the order that would begin the real battle. All ships, execute Guardian Protocol Beta. Let's show the void what a united galaxy can do. The fleet surged forward as one, their combined powers lighting up space itself. The time of quarantine was long past. The time of awakening had served its purpose. Now, at last, it was time for humanity to fulfill its destiny, not as prisoners, not as weapons, but as guardians of all life. The final battle was beginning, and through the mental link, every being in the fleet knew one thing with absolute certainty. They would face it together, united by the very powers that had once caused them to fear humanity. The ancients' last gift to the galaxy had awakened, evolved, and become something even greater than they had planned. As the first real shots of the battle were fired, Lisa felt the truth of it all. Humanity had never been meant for quarantine. They had been meant for this moment, this battle, this great unification of all species against the darkness. And the darkness, for the first time in its ancient existence, began to know fear.